He painted all over my brand new fence. Then his kids started using it for knife throwing practice. And when I confronted him, he told me half of my fence was legally his to destroy. Today we've got 3 stories about people who thought they could just take what wasn't theirs. A coworker, a neighbor, and a boyfriend who all found out the hard way that they were wrong.
I'm a manager, and someone new joined a business area that feeds slightly into my team. Not my direct report, but close enough to be annoying. From day one, he kept sending me messages offering help that came off as pure condescension. One morning he asked if I needed help setting up meetings. I know how to set up a meeting. I've been doing this job for years. The next day he actually came to my desk while I had my headphones in, working, and asked if I was okay, saying it felt like we had a problem, and he just wanted to help because he cared. I looked him dead in the eye and told him I knew exactly what he was doing, that it wasn't going to work, and that he should focus on his own job instead of mine.
Here's the thing. I happened to know he was missing key deliverables on a project he was responsible for with an executive board meeting coming up the next day. So instead of panicking, I went to his boss with a folder full of every condescending message he'd sent me over the past few months. Turns out he'd also been telling his own boss that I was slacking and that he was covering for me. None of that was true. We brought my boss in too. Everyone agreed. Don't remind him about the missing deliverables. Let him find out in the room. And that's exactly what happened. The board meeting rolled around, his section was completely empty, and he turned to me in front of everyone like it was somehow my job to have done his slides. When his boss asked what he meant, he claimed he'd emailed me weeks ago asking me to take over his slides, and that I'd agreed. Except he couldn't find the email because he didn't have his laptop. They made him go get it. 20 minutes later, he came back claiming he must have deleted it, but he definitely remembered me agreeing to it. Nobody in that room believed a word of it, especially since we're not even on the same team. He's now on a formal improvement plan with a 90-day countdown, and somehow I went from being anxious about my own job security around this guy to feeling more secure than I have in years, because it turns out the entire office had my back the whole time. That one was satisfying enough on its own. This next one, though, this is the neighbor everyone's been asking about. I own my house, and back in May, I had a professional 6-foot cedar privacy fence installed, surveyed, and placed exactly on the property line. My new neighbor moved in shortly after. His yard was already fenced on 2 sides by other neighbors. My fence became the 3rd side. Driving home one day, I noticed his kids, young teenagers, had painted all over the side of my fence facing their yard. Not a solid color, just a random splash of shapes and colors, done without asking me anything. I went over to talk to him. The husband answered the door in his boxers, immediately defensive, chest puffed out like he wanted to fight. Before I could finish a sentence, he launched into a rant that since the fence sits on the property line, his half was legally his to do whatever he wanted with. His wife showed up mid-argument, visibly drunk, and added to the chaos. I walked away and decided to let the paint go. It wasn't worth the headache. Then it got worse. The same fence started being used as a backstop for the teenage son's throwing knives and for airsoft target practice. Nails and screws were being hammered into it to hang targets. Paint was one thing. Structural damage was another. I called the fence company to check the neighbor's claim about property lines, and it turned out to work entirely in my favor. As a company policy, which they never disclosed, they build residential fences a few inches inside the customer's own property line, specifically to avoid exactly this kind of dispute. My fence, and both of its faces, were entirely mine. I filed a police report for property damage and told the neighbors I'd see them in small claims court if they didn't pay for the vandalized panels and reinstallation. they paid. On my last visit, the wife, sober this time, was genuinely apologetic, even though the husband wasn't. And the teenage son actually came to my door on his own, apologized, and offered me almost $250 of his own savings to cover the damage, since his dad had told him he'd have to pay for what he broke. I told him to keep the money, and to tell his dad he'd given it to me either way. I don't blame a 13-year-old for his father's behavior. I even offered him yard work over the summer if he wanted to earn the rest of what he was saving for. Funny how the kid turned out just fine, when the dad is clearly the problem, and the mom might have her own issues going on. Last story. This one isn't about property, it's about a relationship where one person's hobby somehow became more important than everything else. I've been with my partner for a year and a half. We love each other, we've had rocky patches, but we always talked things through. The one constant issue has always been his hobby and the volunteer committee that comes with it. Meetings every Monday, practice Wednesday and Thursday evenings, more sessions Friday evening through the entire weekend. Out of 7 days, he was booked 6 of them. On top of that, he does unpaid admin work for the club, so much that he's gotten in trouble at his actual job for doing it during work hours, and has done it during our time together too. He's canceled date nights to deal with club drama, and it's clearly affected his mental health. We'd argued about it before and thought we'd found a compromise. Then came the local pride parade. I'm bisexual, and I told him how much I wanted to go. Nothing was locked in, but he said he'd come if he was free. He knew exactly how much it meant to me. The day of, he messaged to say he was doing his hobby instead. When I asked if he'd rather come with me, he said, and I quote, his hobby was more important. Something in me just went quiet. Not angry, not hurt, just numb. I realized how many times I'd shown up for his hobby without being asked, and how the reverse had never once been true. It wasn't really about the parade. It was the sentence, out loud, that his hobby simply mattered more than I did. 9 days later, she posted an update. They broke up. She said reading through the responses and questions from others gave her exactly the push she needed to finally walk away, and that she was looking forward to going back to being herself and enjoying Pride Month with people who actually show up for her. A coworker who thought helping meant sabotage. A neighbor who thought paint and property lines worked in his favor. And a boyfriend who picked his hobby over his own girlfriend at Pride. If any of these hit close to home, tell me which one in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for a new story every day. See you tomorrow.